Greetings all. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Greetings from Battlefield, Iowa. I'm Geno Berta. I am joined by my dear friend, my fellow Hawkeye, Tara Herrmann. Dr. Herrmann, beg your pardon. Tara,
Okay.
thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
This is an interview that I'm honored to conduct, and we are going to talk about Tara, and we're going to talk about her husband Jay, who served our nation with amazing distinction. In the background is his shadow box. Why don't, Tara, if you wouldn't mind, let's start there. Tell us about that amazing shadow box behind you.
So that would be Jay, who's no longer here, Sergeant Major Joaquin Andujar, one of only two sergeant majors for mortuary affairs. Stories I told you about Jay, and he was a character unlike no other, but we had a running joke that we would never want to work for each other because who Jay was outside of work was very different than who he was inside of work, where he was, let's just say I wouldn't ever want to have been one of his soldiers and got in trouble, because he would put the smack down on it. But he never talked about all his achievements or awards. He would never mention it. It was just something he did. He had a second specialty. It was also maintenance in small arms. And he went over to Kosovo. He served time in Sinai as part of the UN peacekeeping mission, and also did 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And through that got a Bronze Star and numerous other awards and medals. And we jokingly called him the Mexican general because, as you can see, even from all the way where you are, he had lots and lots of awards. He's a special person. There's not many people who can do the task of mortuary and casualty affairs, of recovering someone who's passed and honoring them and getting them home in a very short time, 48 to 72 hours, to their family. So it takes a lot to do that job.
Yes, it does. How did you guys meet?
We met, I think, in a very, very old-fashioned way, in a sense. So one of his best friends from when he was first in the Army, Johnny Rivas, served with him for 6 years. So she kept in touch when she got out, and they would always talk. And for whatever reason, Jay had this obsession with having redheaded kids, but Jay was brown with black hair and half black. So as a scientist, never going to work, just, but he would make that joke. And one day, 11 years ago, actually, he was making that joke to her, and she was like, "Oh, actually, I have a friend you need to meet." And so I was in New York. He was down in Virginia. He was actually a first sergeant. So how we met was actually corresponding through emails initially. So we got to know each other very well through emails. My grandmother loved it. And then we met in person. So, and it always felt like home with Jay.
And I recall that he had a fondness, might be a mild way to put it, for motorcycles.
Not for motorcycles, for bicycles. Yes, for bicycles.
Okay.
I still have, let's see, from Hawaii, I brought back 4 bicycles that he had taken with. One is now with my sister in Chicago. One I call the death trap because it has literally caused everyone to fall. And I think Jay's cursed it because I can't get rid of it. This was my whole goal, right? I just wanted him to get rid of it because everyone has crashed on it. I won't ride it. And somehow I can't sell it. And so I'm like, he cursed it. I'm literally never going to be able to get rid of it. This is my punishment. But yeah, he loved bicycles. He loved riding. You know, one year we rode La Berta, Puerto Rico, which is you ride the whole island of Puerto Rico, 375 miles in 3 days. And you think Puerto Rico's flat. It's not. It's not. There's a lot of climbing. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I've been there a couple times when yes, it's a beautiful, but it's certainly not a flat island. So um, you know, we lost Jay, you lost Jay, and what, you know, we're in this election season, and um, what do you want? What do you want Jay's legacy to be? And answer that however you want.
I guess the number one thing is I don't want him to be forgotten. And I feel like as a country, we've forgotten everyone who served because so few people serve nowadays, right? It's not like when people were drafted for Vietnam or Korea or World War II where, you know, everyone knew someone who served, and you know, whatever you called it, shell shock or war weariness or PTSD, everyone knew someone. You wouldn't call it that, right? But you knew, like, if they were a little touchy or angry at times, you just left them alone. You understood. We don't have that anymore. Most people don't understand what it's like to serve or what it's like to be like your family. Be the supporting structure, right? And knowing those times where you have to be independent. And at the same time, you like to celebrate those who serve. But I would always say we celebrate them with false patriotism because we're not really caring about those who serve. We want to watch the videos where, you know, the dad or mom reunites with the family unexpectedly. Hey, maybe at an NFL game, even better. We want to, like, say I support the troops, put a flag out, and that's what we do. You know, our rate of suicide amongst those who have served has not changed since 2014. It's not budged. And that's what Jay died of. Excuse me.
No, please.
And I very much hold what I refer to as Big Army,
Sure.
his leadership, and his civilian leadership, and actually our country as a whole for his death. Because we don't provide the support or structure that people who serve, who have seen things that no one else sees, who often can't share a lot of that because of it being secret, right, with their families. And so they don't have many of the ways of coping that, say, I would if I saw something horrific, because I could talk to someone and therefore I could release that negative emotion and not relive it over and over again. That's one of the things people fail to realize. Part of the reason PTSD is such an issue is that they don't have anyone to talk to outside of those who serve. You guys all have those stories, right? They don't have anyone to release it to. We don't have enough psychiatrists, we don't have enough therapists, and we don't have a therapy regimen that works. One of the things I learned as a result of Jay's death was that it's probably 9 months now. In 9 months, Mortuary Affairs has lost 6 active duty. And there's only 1,100 of them. So that's a lot.
Could you, for those who are watching who aren't part of our military community, Mortuary Affairs they have the awesome, burdensome responsibility of returning our fallen.
Yes.
You mentioned that Jay was only one of 2 sergeant majors in this military occupation specialty, MOS. I'm guessing he could have transferred out and done something different?
Yes, it could have. And most people in mortuary affairs do. They generally can't take it after a while. So it's actually very rare for someone to stay in as long as Jay did. He served for 25 years in active duty, and all 25 were in mortuary affairs.
Why do you think he did that?
Oh, I know why he did it. He told me. The most important thing to him was getting his brothers and sisters in arms home. It was, even though as difficult as it was one of the most rewarding things he could do. You know, starting when he was a sergeant, he started going to recover killed and missing in action all over the Pacific. He spent 3 years doing that. And he would always talk about how you don't realize how much that means to someone. And then you see the bones you've returned to a wife of a husband that's been missing for 40 years. And it provides them with closure. And you think that doesn't matter after decades, but it does. There's nothing like it. It really mattered to him to get everyone home and get them home with dignity.
You know, one of the things I noticed on your I guess it's your banner Facebook page is Jay's up there giving a block of instruction to a group of other soldiers. And as someone who's done that, and you know, I noticed in this photo, everyone is sitting straight up. Jay has their undivided attention. It seems to me that this horrible yet critically important job was his calling. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say Jay had two callings. You know, I often tell people, and it's true, but they don't believe me until they meet Jay, that he and I were complete opposites in almost every single respect. Jay loves being with people. Your description of everyone's paying attention to him, that's how he taught people. He would have stories and he would draw you in, and then it'd be 3 hours later and you wouldn't realize you had learned, but he had taught you something. And that's from when he was spending time talking about the role of mortuary affairs. Jay would travel to many places to teach people about mortuary affairs, and where there wasn't anyone who could be mortuary affairs, to teach Navy, to teach Air Force individuals how to help assist mortuary affairs to get bodies home. It was his calling, but I think the other calling was he was a true leader. And I mean that in the pure sense that he knew when someone was struggling, and he wasn't going to lecture them. It was going to be, how can I help you? How can I guide you? How can I help you find a path? And Jay always said he needed to operate in the gray. That's one of the things I took away from him is, you know, the protocol may say one thing, but what does it leave out? So what can you finagle so you can take care of people, so you can get bodies home? All those things matter, you know. So yeah, I would say it was his calling. I think anyone who stays in mortuary past 10 years, that's their calling. They take pride in bringing people home and bringing their brothers and sisters in arms home and getting them to their families and have them being treated respectfully. And I guess for me, that respect that's one of the things I find hardest right now. I don't feel that that most of the country actually respects those who serve. I'm not saying that people who serve are all heroes, but there's something that everyone who serves does that I don't, that 99.5% of America doesn't do. And that's a willing sacrifice, right? That you don't require. being drafted anymore. And to not give people the things that they need to be healthy, not providing enough health care, whether that's mental or physical. Jay had numerous injuries by the time he died, and that also played a role into his PTSD. And for me, as someone who's a translational scientist, it was and grew up in a medical family, it was incredibly frustrating. I watched Jay suffer in pain needlessly for good 5 years, where he just had pain every single day, constantly, couldn't sleep. And, eventually someone in the DOD would say, oh yeah, that thing that your spouse said like 3 years ago when she checked with her neurology friend? That's right, you do have herniated discs. We'll fix it now.
And do you think that because the role of the non-commissioned officer and particularly the sergeant major, where they are leading the troops, and I look at pictures of Jay, and he reminds me of a recruiting poster when I look at him, and I can only imagine that he never took care of himself because he's like, I got to take care of my Joes. I got to take care of my troops.
I mean, 100%. He was mission first, soldier first. Him last. I would come before him. So, yeah, one of the things that came up when he passed was, both Jay and I are very private people, and he didn't talk about his PTSD with a lot of people. And I didn't talk about it to a lot of people because that was his wish for it to be private. And, if he saw someone suffering, because there were many times where that happened, he would take them aside and he would talk to them. I know numerous stories of that happening among non-commissioned officers and officers, taking them aside and being like, hey, it's okay. I have that issue too. I go to therapy, I take medicine, go get help. If you need to talk, I'll be here. But he was, the best description I can have for him is actually the Smokey Robinson song, which I mentioned in my eulogy, which is Tears of a Clown. Anyone who met Jay outside of work would consider him a clown. But a lot of that was a front. It was easier to have a smile and not deal with everything. And, so I think that's the other thing I struggle with, especially as someone who also has a very significant depression. This assumption that you have to tell people in order for it to be real. Well, we don't ask everyone to talk about their cardiovascular disease or their diabetes. I mean, those things are real. And for me, his leadership knew he had a problem. They knew something was wrong. And they didn't let me know. And they could have still been here if they had let me know. But I want to bring up one other thing, which is actually the study that I was getting to. The VA reported on a study from mortuary affairs, and I think outside of probably the medics and the emergency physicians that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think probably the PTSD is highest among mortuary affairs. They were initially only allowed to serve for 6 months at a time because of the high rates. So their rates are reported 3 times higher than infantry, so 33%. And I use the word reported because for precisely the reason we talked about, right? People don't like to mention it, even in surveys. So my guess would be 50% or higher. But the reason I bring that up is even by the VA's own studies, none of the techniques they use, whether it's non-pharmacological or pharmacological work, they do nothing to help people in mortuary affairs handle their PTSD. In part, that's because of us not letting them talk about the things they've seen to someone who's not military. And the other reason is because, truthfully, the drugs we have available, they don't work. They're treating the secondary conditions of PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, the OCD that results from it. The only thing I've seen actually work in anyone that I know is THC, marijuana, and yet we don't allow anyone to use that if they're active duty.
Oh no, that will get you, and you're talking to somebody who's defended drug boards and prosecuted drug boards, absolutely. Did I recall, and this was, my gosh, years ago, Esquire magazine did a wonderful profile of mortuary affairs. Did you by chance, you ever remember hearing about that? Did you ever read? Well, they talked about there was and they let them in, and there was a young soldier, probably in E3, E4, who was polishing the buttons of a.
So they're at Dover. They're at
Yeah.
Dover, yeah.
And the reporter, coming from a place of respect and love, but probably, quite frankly, awkwardness and uncomfortableness, and just to try to fill the void, of the silence, said, that's wonderful. The family, I'm sure, will appreciate that when they see the body. And the service member said, "Oh, sir, he's going to be cremated." And that's just so that in this moment that we are honoring our fallen sibling citizen. And I can only imagine how often Jay took that young soldier aside and was allowed him to release that all those emotions. And I just wish Jay could have had that. I mean, Tara, I'm so sorry.
Okay. I mean, it's weird to not have him around when he helped so many people. When the only reason I'm here, literally the only reason I'm here, is because of him. And I struggle with that because the military, big army, put Jay in a position where he was not getting the care he needed, could not get the care he needed, and felt that his health, his mental health, his physical health, all his issues were weighing down my health, and that I could not get better because of them. And so that he had to make a choice of it's either his health or my health. And he chose my health. It speaks to who Jay is, but no one should be put in that position. I could not get better because of them. And so that he had to make a choice of it's either his health or my health. And he chose my health. It speaks to who Jay is, but no one should be put in that position.
I can't promise this, but if I can get part of this recording in front of Joe Biden, and something tells me that people with a lot higher pay grade than me in this campaign will, if you could talk, and quite frankly, I'm going to throw Jill Biden into Dr. Jill Biden because she has been so wonderful in supporting our military families. If you could just talk to them, what would you tell
them? I feel like they know a lot. I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons I have respect for Vice President and Mrs. Biden, they had a son who served. They know what it's like to worry, to lose, to sacrifice. They know what that costs families. And they know what that deployment looks like and what it costs the person who serves. If I could say anything, it's to remove all the processes that are involved in getting care, whether that's in the VA or the DoD, and to truly, part of the reason we cannot fill positions in the DoD and the VA is because we don't pay what people can make in the civilian world. A psychiatrist can make 2 to 3 times what they can make with the Army. So, the people that are there, either are there because they have a calling or because, frankly, they're the bottom of the barrel and they can't get the job anywhere else. And it's not just psychiatry, it's every single part of healthcare in the military. And I speak of that personally because not just of Jay's care, but there's been times where I've had to be in military care and have gotten in arguments with them because of what I would consider negligent care. And if anyone should get the top care possible, it should be those that have served for our country and sacrificed for our country. And having to die has been an eye-opening process for me in terms of the burden we place on family when someone passes. No matter if you're civilian or not, when someone dies, it's hard. But in the military, so many spouses don't have another job because
it's so hard.
Yeah, you can't, right? I stayed in the job that I had for a very long time because that allowed me to move with Jay. And I'm in a very fortunate position financially that most people who are a spouse are not. And, when someone passes, they're placing so much responsibility on nonprofits to help take care of the families. You, as a spouse, you only get 13 sessions for grief counseling. 13. So if you go once a week, that's 3 months. And if your kids need grief counseling, good luck. You're gonna have to pay for it. Or go to one of the organizations that they don't list, but just mention you can go to on Military One Source. And if there's issues with line of duty cases or any of your casework, well, good luck. Your casualty assistance officer, if you have a good one, will try. But they're put in, they are serving, so they're put in an awkward spot. And so then we have TAPS, which I will say is a great organization. But there shouldn't be someone at TAPS who all they do is handle casework of spouses. That's literally, there's someone who, that's all they do. And
could you, Tara, for those who are watching, would you please just give a little background on what TAPS is, please?
Yeah, TAPS stands for Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. So it's for surviving spouses. It's a nonprofit, and they try to provide people who can serve as your mentor, support structure, offer financial counseling, and help with casework. So they're a great program. Even though I'm not one for having someone to call to check on me, I have appreciated their outreach, and when I did need them, they were very quick to respond. But it does bother me that the military structures it so that you do need them. And I worry, and it frustrates me that I know of, and I just think about the other military spouses with families who suddenly all their income is gone and they're waiting sometimes up to a year for the line of duty to be decided. So they're just living off that $100,000 death gratuity. And also if there's life insurance, maybe, that, but if there's life insurance, right? Because a lot of soldiers don't take that out. And that's all they have till that's decided. And they have kids and they need help. And they may not have been the person who was managing the finances, and all of a sudden they're supposed to learn how to do all of that overnight. And even though the military does offer one financial planning session, and even though TAPS will do that, that's not something you just pick up overnight. And we just drop such a burden on so many of the military families when they lose someone.
What? Um, so I want to kind of talk about in the political sense, the, shall we say, the elephant defecating in the room. I'm sure you're aware that the president, by his own words and by numerous other sources, my bias, because I'm an Atlantic subscriber, and I think Jeff Grover is a terrific journalist, and he's the editor. What would you say to someone who's like, well, no, I think this is all just a media attack on our president. I know Donald Trump loves our troops. What, as a military widow, what are your thoughts on that? The whole loser, sucker, what he said to General Kelly. Why did he do it?
Yeah, I was very angry the day I saw that article. I don't know how anyone can support President Trump, but I especially, there's some things that should never be said, and that's one of them. Don't denigrate those who served, who died, however they died. They did something he tried to get out of 5 times. And I have dealt with people who tell me I'm making it up and that's not real and it's propaganda. And I say, well, then tell me what Trump has done for anyone who has served. Because all I've watched this GOP Congress do, and all I've seen Trump do out of one thing where they got rid of the widow tax, it's the only thing they've done. All I've seen them do is try to strip benefits and care away. The first thing they were going to cut from a DoD budget was healthcare. $2 billion is a drop in the bucket. And the only reason it got that stopped is because there was such an outcry. I don't understand people who say it's made up when there's so many sources that confirm it. And I don't understand how they say they can still support the troops and the military, but support anyone right now, with very few exceptions, who considers himself GOP or the president. And I say with very few exceptions because I am in Maryland and I have Governor Hogan, and I would say he's the exception right now. He's a moderate Republican who I feel is doing a good job, but he's rare.
My honor and my good fortune to interview my friend, Dr. Tara Herrmann, the widow of Sergeant Major Jay Herrmann, who
it's funny that you said Jay Herrmann, because he always going to say he's going to take my name rather than Sergeant Major Andujar.
well, guess what he just did? And
yeah.
I'm never going to win any awards for consecutive mass attendance, but my dad's a go to mass every day kind of guy, and he lit some candles for Jay. So